Erev Tov Rabotai, we are continuing with our Mishna Yomi, Masechet Shabbat. We are up to Perek Yud Mishnah Vav. Today's Mishnayot should be Le'elu Nishmat, Neria ben Svetlana Aranbayev, and Eliyahu ben Burcha Israelov, Menuchatam beGan Eden, Amen. This Mishnah now deals with matters unrelated to the Melacha of transferring. It begins by discussing some prohibitions that apply to personal grooming. Hanotel tziponav zo bazo o b'shenav, if one removes his fingernails by pulling at one with the other or by biting them with his teeth, v'chen sa'aro, v'chen sefamo, v'chen zikano, or if one removes the hair of his head, or the hair of his mustache, or the hair of his beard by plucking it out with his hand, v'chen godelet, v'chen kochelet, v'chen pokeset, or if a woman braids her hair, paints her eyes, or parts her hair, Rabbi Eliezer mechayev, Rabbi Eliezer rules that the person is liable for performing a biblically prohibited melacha. Now, removing fingernails and hair, according to Rabbi Eliezer, are toladot of shearing, because Rabbi Eliezer holds that one is liable for removing a hair or fingernail without a utensil, such as scissors, because one can perform these actions just as well with one's hands, as Rashi explains in Masechet Shabbat, page 94b. Braiding and parting one's hair are toladot of building, which, according to Rabbi Eliezer, fixing a woman's hair is regarded as a form of building, as the Gemara explains on page 95a. And painting one's eyes is a tolada of writing, which Rashi explains, according to Rabbi Eliezer, just as one who traces around letters is liable for writing, so is a woman who beautifies her eyes by painting around them with makeup, as Rashi explains on page 94b. V'chachamim osrein mishum shvut, however, the sages rule that these actions are prohibited only by rabbinic decree, only midrabanan, because removing a fingernail or hair with one's hand or mouth is unusual. Braiding and parting one's hair are not biblical forms of building, and painting an eye is not a biblical form of writing, but nevertheless, all these actions are rabbinically forbidden. The Mishnah now discusses an aspect of the melacha of reaping. Hatolesh me'atzitz nakuv hayav. One who plucks a plant from a pot that as a whole is liable for reaping because the plant absorbs nutrients from the ground beneath it through the hole, which suffices for it to be considered attached to the ground. Now the Mishnah is referring to a hole wide enough for a narrow root to pass through. Whether the hole is in the bottom or side of the pot, a plant can draw nutrition from the ground through it. So since it's attached to the ground, plucking it is an act of reaping, since it's, so to speak, attached to the ground. V'she'enu nakuv patur, but one who plucks a plant from a pot that does not have a hole in it is exempt, because the plant was not attached to the ground when he plucked it. Rabbi Shimon poter bazeh ubazeh. However, Rabbi Shimon rules that one who plucks a plant from a pot is exempt both in this case, where the pot has a hole, and in that case, where it does not have a hole. Because according to Rabbi Shimon, a plant in any type of pot is not biblically recognized as attached to the ground, and the Rav tells us, Ven alachak Rabbi Shimon, the halakha does not follow Rabbi Shimon. And in the previous part of the Mishnah, we discussed the different prohibitions that apply to personal grooming. The Rav did tell us, the halakha followed the opinion of the sages, where all those were only prohibited by rabbinic decree, and not the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer that they were deoraita. And that is in Rabotai of Mishnah Vav. We begin now with Perek Yud Aleph, Mishnah Aleph. This chapter is going to continue to discuss the Melacha Hotzah transferring. Hazorek mereshut hayachid lereshut harabim, mereshut harabim lereshut hayachid chayav. Someone who throws an object from a private domain to a public domain, or from a public domain to a private domain, is liable for violating the Melacha of transferring. And the Mefarshim explain, all melachot are learned from the construction of the Mishkan in the desert. Now, transferring is prohibited as an av melacha, as a primary melacha, because in the desert, the Levim transferred the beams that form the walls of the Mishkan from the Reshut Harabim, the public area around the Mishkan, to Reshut Yechid, the wagons used to transport the beams from place to place, and from the Reshut Yechid, the wagons, to Reshut Harabim, the new side of the Mishkan. Now, although the Levim carried the beams and did not throw them, throwing is also prohibited as a tolada, as an offspring, as a subcategory of transferring, because when a person throws something from one domain to another, he lifts the object, he does akira from one domain and places it down, hanacha, and the other, the basic parts of transferring. If someone throws an object from one private domain to another private domain, and there's a public domain that is in between them. Rabbi Akiva mechayev v'chachamim potrin. Rabbi Akiva maintains that he is liable because when the object passes through the public domain, it is viewed as if it came to rest there. But the sages maintain that he is exempt because the object did not land in the public domain and is not viewed as if it did. And to explain their opinions, Rabbi Akiva holds that something contained in the airspace of a domain is viewed as if it has come to rest in it. Kiluta kemishu nacha. Meaning, when an object enters the airspace of a different domain, it is encompassed by that domain and caught in it. And therefore, it's legally regarded as having come to rest there. Now, in the case of our Mishnah, since the object passed through the public domain, it is legally considered as if it landed in it, and the person who threw it from the private domain is therefore liable. Now, the Rav explains that he is liable only if the thrown object traveled within 10 tefachim of the ground, since the Reshut Rabim extends only to this height. Now, we said in the Mishnah, v'chachamim potrin, but the sages maintain that he is exempt, because the sages do not accept the principle of kiruta kimishu nachas. Something contained in the airspace of a domain is viewed as if it had come to rest in it. Therefore, the object is not viewed as having come to rest in the public domain. The only transfer that took place was from one private domain to another, and in that case, there is no liability biblically. And the Rav does tell us that the halakha follows the opinion of the sages. The Rav does also tell us Lemala me'asra shu makom petur. If a person threw it above 10 tefachim, which is a exempt domain, it's a makom patur. Kulam lo pligi de patur. Everyone would agree in that situation that you are exempt. But again, the Rab tells us in this dispute between Rabbi Akiva and the sages, the halakha follows the opinion of the sages. That is in Rabotai of today's Mishna Yomi. Baruch Adonai Leolam. Amen v'amen.